Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Fertility Confidence Podcast. Today, I have a conversation for you with CEO and founder of Future Family, Claire Tomkins. If you have not heard of Future Family, like myself, I let Claire know I've actually never heard of you guys, and I think this is such a fantastic option that so many couples need to just help take some of that financial burden off of growing your family. And Future Family may just be that option, that solution for you. They help you overcome the cost of fertility treatments with customized financing. And like I said, I actually had no idea this was an option. And it's specifically for fertility. They don't do any sort of financing for any other anything. Claire went through her own fertility journey. She has 3 beautiful IVF babies herself, and she shares her journey with us in this week's episode. And then what led her to realizing the huge hole in the financial market for helping couples to take some of that financial burden off of their plate and make it more accessible in a really easy way. The website is fantastic to navigate. They also offer coaching, not just financial coaching, but coaching through the fertility journey as well, and their new baby or your money back guarantee. So you can learn all about Future Family in this week's episode with Claire. It was such a joy to sit down with her and just hear about some other options that maybe you didn't even know were on the table in terms of trying to make that decision of, can we do IVF? What does that look like for our family without allowing it to be an even larger financial burden or financial decision than it is? So before we get into this week's episode, a quick thank you to our podcast sponsor, Needed. Make sure you check them out over at thisisneeded.com. Inside Fertility Confidence Method, we love the Needed prenatal line, especially the male prenatal and their prenatal essentials. And they did an amazing research study looking at various different prenatal options that women were taking and how they were still nutrient deficient even when they were taking a prenatal vitamin. And they've used this research to formulate their products and ensure that women who are going through their TTC journey and through their pregnancy and beyond are getting those adequate levels of nutrients that their body needs so that they aren't left in a depleted state after their fertility journey is complete. So check them out, thisisneeded.com, and you can use the code Dr. Kelsey for 20% off your first order. Hello, Claire. Welcome to the Fertility Confidence Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Kelsey. It's great to be here.
I am so excited to get to know you a little bit better, hear your story, hear about Future Family. But why don't we start with you just sharing a little bit about yourself and your fertility journey?
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. Well, it's great to be here. And I am the proud mom of 3 IVF kids. And my oldest is 10 now, which is incredible. And then I also have IVF twins, boy-girl twins, which is also exciting. And my twins are 7. So it's kind of a full household. And, you know, the experience for me was I've had both experiences of kind of the IVF journey. Getting pregnant with Natalie was a long process. Now I've, of course, met so many more women and couples who've been through, in many ways, even more difficult journeys. But I actually ended up doing 6 rounds of IVF to conceive Natalie. And it was over the course of multiple years, and had those same moments that some people experience of just wondering if it was ever going to work. Yeah. And then I actually conceived the twins on my first cycle of IVF, which was actually a big surprise both to myself and my husband, since we were planning for a long ordeal. But yes, no, so I've been on the patient side, and now I'm on the innovation side as a founder and leader of a Future Family, where we very much focus on supporting women and couples as they navigate this journey financially.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing. And I work with quite a few clients who are still in the thick of their IVF journey. And I'd love for you to maybe share, like, it taking 6 rounds to conceive your first. I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. So we're in like a similar crazy age bracket of kiddos. But to think back on that time and it taking that long, how did you keep going? Like, where did that strength and resiliency come from? What can you share with listeners who are, on their second, third round of IVF, perhaps?
Yeah, well, things have changed a lot over the last decade in a really genuinely positive way. I think we talk a lot more openly
Mhm.
about fertility and IVF, and it's, we're obviously normalizing this. I mean, it is today, one in, the stats are sort of 1 in 6, but it's, the truth is in many cases it's actually closer to 1 in 5, and then if you're over the age of 35 as a couple, it's 1 in 3. So
Right.
it's actually extremely mainstream and normalized. So I
Yeah.
think that that's changed a lot over the last 10 years. When I was going through it, it was still a bit kind of hush hush. And I think this is a positive trend overall in women's health as we talk much more openly around about
Yeah.
the spectrum of women's health issues, whether we're talking about fertility, not just affecting women and men, but
Mhm.
nonetheless often perceived as a female health issue, menopause, you know, everything in between. So I do really sense that there's been a shift. So I think that helps a lot with anyone who's navigating this journey. Is, you can talk more openly and freely about it. It is a very common thing. I think when I was going through it, it was not as openly talked about. So I had my own support system, friends and family who obviously knew what was going on. But I think a lot of it was also having the right care team. And I
Yeah.
know, you as a doctor would appreciate that
Mhm.
it really matters if you have a supportive and empathetic care team. But it's really important as you go through something where you don't have perfect control, that you allow for it to be a process or a journey, as opposed to fixating on it working every time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we were talking about this actually. In our community, I host an office hour so that our clients can come and just ask me any and all of their questions. And one of our clients is trying to make that decision right now with IVF, and her partner aren't necessarily aligned. He's more absolutely, yes, let's do this. It makes sense. And she's not quite there yet. And she was talking about how two things. She said, one, I feel like he's still assuming it's a guarantee. And that's kind of what the clinic is almost making it sound like. And whereas she's more in the fertility world, in the fertility community, hearing the stories, and has, talked to colleagues and things about their journey who have also gone through IVF, and has heard the multiple round stories, and heard how it's not usually just for most people, it's actually not a one and done kind of situation. Um, and she had mentioned to me that having a community and knowing other women who have gone through it was something that she was so surprised by. She felt like she was going to be the only one in her, circle of community that was even considering doing IVF. So she's like, now that we're actually being open about this being potentially a part of our journey, it's really interesting to hear from people I've worked with or friends who have either been also making that same decision or have made it, and being able to kind of talk through with them. So I love that. I love that we're talking about it more. And thank you for sharing that stat, because hearing, 1 in 3 over the age of 35, I think really does help to normalize that this is a conversation lots of couples are having behind closed doors. And the more we speak openly about it, the easier it can be, I think, to make it feel not so taboo and scary.
Yeah, and I would say that, to go a little further too, I mean, so some of the more positive things are clearly the success rates of IVF have continued to increase. And
Yeah.
so I think that's something that couples who are starting today should feel really positive about. It's still the case that, one area where we need to have more open conversations is around the number of cycles it may take to
Yeah.
achieve success. It is still a little bit closer to a coin flip as to whether or not you achieve success on your first cycle. And so again, my now, entire career and platform has been dedicated to helping couples navigate this financially. And these two things are very connected.
Yeah.
And I often joke that the two most stressful subjects that you can
Right.
imagine, fertility and finances, and we just
Together.
hit it head on.
Yeah.
But they are extremely important, and often for families, for couples, for women, stressful topics,
Yeah.
because you are typically paying out of pocket for elective healthcare for fertility. Coverage is increasing. I am a huge advocate of coverage, but it is still the exception, not the rule. And I paid for my own IVF out of pocket. And so the cost of IVF, can be about $20,000 per cycle. And the reality is that you may not succeed after the first cycle. So I think that's an important part of the dialogue, is that we're normalizing. This is a very typical now pathway to parenthood, but it is also a very expensive pathway to parenthood.
Yeah.
And so we like to just kind of really have these deep and honest conversations about, how do you pay for IVF? What are your options? You're often doing this at a point in your life where you may have other financial goals or things you're saving for, whether you've just bought a house or you're aspiring to do so. And so it's a complicated financial time. So that's really, I think, also part of the equation. So we want couples and women navigating this to know it may take more than one cycle, but the success rates have gotten to be very high. So you can feel, a lot of confidence that you have a very, very strong chance of this succeeding for you. Be prepared both emotionally, psychologically, and financially that it may take more than one cycle with your provider to get there. And then, places like Future Family, our company, can help women and couples think about how to pay for that. And we offer low interest rate financing. We don't think that anyone really should pay upfront for IVF. It's too expensive at $20,000 to $25,000. But rather, we offer these very affordable monthly plans, $350 to $450 a month. They're designed to fit into your budget, and they hopefully alleviate a lot of the stress around at least that part of the journey, because it's an important part of the journey. Is how you're going to pay.
Yeah, it's one thing to, talk about how do we optimize we focus a lot on how do we optimize our bodies and optimize our partners' bodies, and how do we, decide when it's time to move into that next step. And you're right. The reality is the financial decision is a big determining factor for a lot of couples on what that next step even looks like.
I think it plays into that. We want to create, I'm sure we're aligned, you want to create you want to alleviate as much background stress as possible.
Totally.
And so we often take that approach too, like empathetically. I've been through this journey. I have a really good understanding of what it's like. And we think that we can really help alleviate that component for couples, where they know that if it's one cycle or two cycles, they can borrow up to $50,000 with Future Family. Gives them a very, very good chance of being able to successfully complete two cycles. And then I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit later, but one of the things that we had worked on, my whole background has been in consumer finance from my career. So it's just serendipitous that I ended up having IVF, because all I've ever done is consumer finance. And we now have a program at Future Family called Baby or Your Money Back. And it is the first nationwide program where not only will we finance you up to $50,000, but we will offer you a financial guarantee that if you do not have a baby after two cycles, then you will get your full money back. And so it's really our effort to stand behind this, exactly to your point, because it's actually harder to go through IVF and fertility and or conceive if you also have background stress. And whether people like to say it out loud or not, money and finances are very stressful topics.
Yeah, 100%. When my parents had me 35 years ago, they wanted a third baby, and my mom wasn't getting pregnant. And this was obviously a long time ago. And so fertility clinics were very new. My mom said they had to travel an hour. I grew up in Barrie. They had to travel to Toronto. There wasn't anything near them, but they did go to this fertility clinic, and she said they had a conversation, and she's like, I think we did some lab work, but I don't even really remember. But they did tell us that our best option was to do IVF. And at the time it was $5,000. And she was like, we did not have even a penny to rub together, let alone $5,000 at that time. And I was like, oh my God, Mom, if my patients heard that it was $5,000, they'd be like, sign me up right away. But it just goes to show how that was 30 plus years ago. And we're just now, yes, it's gotten more expensive, but we are just now in a place where we're actually talking about options. And for her, it was just, they walked away from that.
Yeah.
They ended up having a miracle pregnancy, and I have a younger brother, and we're 14 years apart, and everyone was shocked, but that was the end of their journey. And she just had to come to peace with that. And that's just something I feel when it's a financial reason to close that chapter, I just feel so unwell about that being the decision for some couples when they don't feel ready to naturally close that chapter for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. That's exactly how we feel. And it just, like I said, it was this serendipitous moment where, I had only worked on financial products before I was in fertility. I actually used to work in the renewable energy industry. I financed solar assets for a long time.
Oh,
And when I went through IVF, I really felt like one of the biggest gaps in healthcare. And, again, there's been a lot of innovation in the last 10 years. Success rates are higher. There's more complete solutions. We do talk more holistically about care these days. Like, there's a lot of great innovation, but we have continued to feel there's really a financial gap. And it adds to the stress. And for many couples, it can also lead to delays. And frankly, the last thing you want to do in fertility is delay, because
yeah.
it's sort of time is not on your side, but it's also psychologically difficult to have to wait. And so that's exactly right. Like, I think this is I've long felt this is a very important conversation, is how, fertility and finances mash up elective healthcare in this country. And there, are solutions out there now,
Yeah.
which, hopefully can be a good thing.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the delay because here in Ontario,
Yeah.
we have funded IVF
Mhm.
programs now, which is
Mhm.
fantastic. And it is opening the doors for a lot of couples who otherwise would not be able to take this step. However, at more popular clinics, it is a 12 to 18-month wait. And if we're in a situation where it's been deemed that IVF is the best option, like that is a time piece that we have to take into consideration. And that part's always also just kind of rubbed me the wrong way of like, I love that they've offered this funding and that's lovely, but it's so popular that I have clients waiting minimum a year for their
Wow.
funded cycle to come up. And a lot can change in a
Yeah.
year, especially over 35. We know we want to be making quicker decisions and making the sooner. I always tell my clients, the sooner you make embryos, the better. So if it comes down to a timing decision, like at the end of the day, that's always going to win. So I love that you bring that up, that, the delays that can come with the financial aspect is a big factor
Yeah,
in
definitely
success.
starting to weigh in. And we see that, in Canada, but also in the US, is that there's in coverage programs now. We're about to open up California in January, which I'm excited about because I'm, like I said, a big advocate of expanding coverage. But
Yeah.
sometimes it can lead to delays in getting that coverage. And I do think that couples, again, need to have choices, at least to make their own decisions. And so that's certainly where we hope, or we aim to help at Future Family, is to
Yeah.
make it so that if couples want to proceed with care, that finances shouldn't be a blocker, and they can take out a low interest loan, but it's very specifically designed for fertility. So
Yeah. Walk us through what that
yeah,
looks like at Future
I'd love
Family in a
to.
little more
Yeah.
detail.
Yeah, I'd love to. So this is a very specific product. We talk about it. It's very specifically a fertility loan. So I think because one of the first questions I sometimes get, understandably, sometimes people ask, well, you have financing for fertility, you make it affordable. It's 350, 450 a month, but couldn't someone go to their bank or somewhere else? And it's sort of like,
Yeah.
well, let's unpack what a fertility loan really is. And so we do a few things that are very different and don't exist. And first and foremost, because we've been lending for 8 years, we've lent over 200 million to American consumers. We've financed over 10,000 families. Because we've been doing this, we are essentially owning and building an asset class, and that allows us to give really differential and low interest rates to consumers because we know how to underwrite couples going through fertility. So this is like one differentiator. If you think about the financial markets, this is part of what we have built, is like a very specific loan that is just for fertility. We don't lend for
Yeah.
deck repair or home improvement or med spa. We do fertility
Yeah.
and family building, really
Yeah.
family building. So that's very specific. And then as you go through this process, you will also get pre-approved up to an amount that you may need for treatment. So we're not locking you in. If you
Mm.
get pre-approved up to 30,000, but you only need to use 25,000, you will only pay interest and draw 25,000. So this doesn't, again, it's maybe sounds a little bit like a small thing when you first say it, but it doesn't exist. It's part of being a fertility loan because we don't know exactly how
How
much
much?
funding you're going to need. You'll be pre-approved and we will allow you to draw funds. So you do not have to pay out-of-pocket expenses when you go through fertility.
Right.
The funds go to your clinic, the funds go to your pharmacy, the funds go where they're needed. So again, completely designed around the fertility patient. You come in, you'll go through like a 2-minute application on the website. I would encourage anyone thinking about fertility to just do that and see what you're pre-approved for and what you can do here. So you go to the website, you get a 2-minute application, will get you a pre-approval, and you'll be able to talk to a financial specialist. And from there, we'll help you understand how much funding you might need and the process of how that funding will work for you to the clinic. And as you know, medications can be up to a third of the cost. So the clinic, the pharmacy, and some of the ancillary providers. It is a quite seamless process because we've been doing this for fertility patients for a long time. So you can actually get everything completed within 24 to 48 hours very quickly. I like to emphasize that because when you're going through fertility, you have a checklist. You're like, this doctor appointment, this ultrasound, maybe these vitamins, you have a checklist. This is something that we can take off your plate. We can just say, come to Future Family, and within 24 to 48 hours, we can get your funding, the financial piece set up for you. We have lots of clients who end up taking a second cycle, and we can finance and fund that too. I think I mentioned that. So that gives you also some peace of mind as you start this process. And then separately, but importantly, if you decide, you can purchase now a financial guarantee on your investment. So you can use our baby or your money back program. You can purchase this financial guarantee. And if you are not successful after 2 cycles, all of your money comes back. So should you need a 3rd or 4th cycle, there is no additional out-of-pocket expense. And one of the exciting things is that now, on average, it's not every couple, but on average, if you can do 3 to 4 cycles, you can get above a 90% chance of success. It's a very high thing. So this is something we've long believed in as a company. Is, we want everyone to have a chance at like that, very high chance of success.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I mean, I feel I can hear questions like that clients would ask me.
Please.
I'm curious, is there a length of time in which they're locked in to repay the money?
Yeah. So the short answer is no. And what's really, again, this is very specifically designed for fertility patients, for women, for couples. There are no prepayment penalties. And I think that's an important note too, because this is why I would strongly recommend, if you're going through the complexity of a fertility journey, you've got that checklist, all these things you have to do. The financial thing is the last thing you want to deal with. And even the bill payment, it's, that was something where I had lined up the funds, but I actually didn't have a good experience going into the clinic and having to pay, whether it was credit card or check, because I sort of wanted to go to the clinic and focus on my doctor and not focus on the money. Yeah. So I would say, even psychologically, let's say that you intend to, pay it back maybe out of savings, or maybe you're anticipating that you may be able to put money towards this. This is a completely flexible program. You can sign up for Future Family. We will manage your bills for you while you go through fertility. And then on the other side of it, you can decide to pay off your, fertility loan, or you can, carry it it's a low monthly payment. So you can carry it for a number of years to give yourself more financial flexibility. You're not locked in, and there are no penalties.
I love that. That's amazing. Explain to me again, sorry, one more time, with the baby or your money back. So they are purchasing this extra guarantee. And then if the 2 cycles aren't successful, they basically get to start over with that same funding that they began with. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's right. So with a baby or money back guarantee, you purchase it up front before you start IVF. And then you have 30 months. So, 2.5 years, which is a very long time to complete 2 cycles.
Right.
So you have really good coverage. And then if you have completed 2 cycles of IVF and you do not have a successful live birth, then you are covered and you will get your money refunded. And so really, this gives couples, our goal was peace of mind.
Yeah.
That, you do pay a little bit of, extra upfront, but this is the idea that by buying this financial guarantee, either the 2 cycles are successful, great, you get to bring home your baby, or you may need additional treatment, but you're not facing that, that financial pressure. Because it is a lot of pressure. If you've done 2 failed cycles, you may have spent up to $50,000. So again, it doesn't help your stress level or your cortisol when you learn, oh gosh, those didn't work and now I need more. So
More.
we're really trying to get to a point where couples can, hopefully feel like they are on a bit of a journey, but they have more confidence that it's going to work and that they're,
Yeah.
financially have peace of mind.
I love that because I do see that with clients with
Mm.
benefit coverage where they're like, oh, they'll cover up to this amount or this many cycles. And if that doesn't work, then that's it. And that's like a whole other like added piece of pressure. I'm like, let's maybe not, my philosophy at Fertility Confidence Method, especially, well, mostly for my clients who are in the IVF space and IUI,
Mm.
but for everybody is like, I don't want to be planning for failure. I don't want to be thinking 3 cycles ahead. We want to really be present in this cycle. And when we're in the IVF space and the financial aspect is included and this coverage and benefits and what have you, it really does take couples out of that present cycle because they are mentally calculating and preparing, well, what if we have to do it again or when we have to do it again? And I think that this piece of baby or the money back, the guarantee, is a really great way to take some of that pressure of like, we can just cross that bridge when we get there. And it's so challenging to let yourself do that in the IVF space, but I think it's so, so important.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with all of that. I think we're very aligned on that. I mean, part of our real hope with offering these financial solutions for couples and for women going through IVF is you are able to focus on your care and you're able to be present.
Yeah.
And especially with the baby or money back guarantee, you can just focus on your first cycle. If you are successful on your first cycle, it's great. Unlike some of the bundled packages, because there's
Yeah.
unfortunately a lot of confusing financial products, and we've tried to
Yeah.
simplify things at Future Family, like make it simple, really.
That's
So
what we need in the fertility
yeah,
space.
simplicity. So we don't
Simplicity.
have any of these things where you decide up front if you want to buy like a jumbo package for like 2, 3, 4 cycles because you
Right.
might need them. It's like you
No.
need to be present and in the moment. So with our program, you simply buy this financial guarantee up front. If you're pregnant after first cycle, great. You never purchase a second or third cycle. You never have additional cost.
Right.
But then if you need a second cycle, then you go forward with that. But to your point, you can be fully present for that first cycle. And then that same thing for your second cycle. And then if you need to, at that point, deal with like, oh, it was not successful. I agree. I don't think you want to be worrying about that, but this will hopefully take some of the financial worry away.
Yeah.
Like, you know what, I'm going to focus on my first cycle, my second cycle. If something were to happen, I'll deal with it then because I've got financial protection.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a lot about being present. And, I think that's exactly right when you're going through care.
Yeah. Yeah. Does Future Family also work with couples who are looking at embryo adoption or surrogacy or adoption? Like, are we able to peruse Future Family for any type of family planning, or is it specific for IVF?
Yeah, so that's exactly right. It is all about family building. We cover everything from egg donor, sperm donor, embryo donation. We are financing the IVF side of surrogacy couples. We are obviously doing reciprocal IVF. So there's everything that you want to pursue on the family building side. We work very hard to support. That's right.
Amazing. I love
So
that.
it's not just IVF, and we do a
Yeah.
lot of egg freezing as well, which I think
Yeah.
egg
That was my
freezing
next
also,
question.
that's a big out-of-pocket expense when you're at a point where you may be saving money, not wanting
Yeah.
to spend it. And so egg freezing, can typically be as low as like $300 a month. And so really an affordable option for women who want to freeze their eggs.
Yeah. I love that. Definitely, like, our listeners are past that point, but egg freezing when you are young is something I am so passionate about. And I just feel like we don't talk about it enough. And I love that. I wouldn't have been able to afford it in my early 20s, coming out of 9 years of education and having those bills to pay. But maybe if, my life had looked different, that definitely would have been something that I would have been
I think it's
pursuing.
another example where, it's not an advantage to delay.
Yeah.
And egg freezing, had a big uptick during the pandemic because
Yeah.
finally women had the flexibility to do those 2 weeks. It really only takes you about 2 weeks or so.
Yeah.
But, it can be hard if you're working full time to find those 2 weeks. So I think during the pandemic, we saw, great, now we have flexibility. And I think there was also a little bit of cessation, obviously, on
Yeah.
the dating, even marriage front, but we also had flexibility. So egg freezing did start to go up. And I think that's right. I think there's no advantage to delaying. And to the extent that you're thinking about it as a financial commitment, part of our goal of Future Family is to say, like, okay, it's 2 weeks of your time, but it's also a minimal financial commitment if you do it as a flexible personal loan,
Yeah.
fertility loan.
Yeah, I love
So,
that. Amazing. This was
right.
so insightful. And I think Future Family sounds fantastic. And like I just love finding other women in the fertility space, especially that are allowing couples to have an open door that likely wouldn't have had an open door when we're talking about building their family. So I really appreciate what you have brought to the fertility space. And thank you so much for sharing. And as we wrap up here, is there anything about how to actually, before we do that, how do couples find Future Family? Where do we
Yeah,
find
I
you?
mean, yeah, exactly. We don't want to end without saying that. So just you can find Future Family. You can find us at our website, futurefamily.com. So Future Family. You can find us on Instagram at Future Family Fertility, but our website, futurefamily.com. And that's where you can start your journey. That's where you can go through this. And I really encourage couples and women thinking about any form of fertility. It's a 2-minute application,
Love
and you
that.
will get to speak directly to a financial specialist who will give you a lot of options.
Amazing.
And so know your options, know what you can do to take this one stress out of off your plate or off your checklist. And yeah, our goal is to be able to help everybody get a solution. And we can usually do so within 24 to 48 hours. So
That's amazing.
futurefamily.com.
Thank you. And what is one piece of fertility advice that you'd love to leave for our listeners?
Yeah, I think the theme of part of our conversation has just been to be very, present, and to try and hold that, that optimism, that positivity. Hopefully we can help, get those distractions, financial stress and other stress about lifestyle off your plate. And I think for something as important as fertility, you just want to be able to be positive and optimistic. The success rates are really high these days. So I bring a lot of optimism and positivity to those out there who are going through this.
I love that. Thank you so much, Claire. Thanks for joining me. And I will talk to you again soon.
Yes, such a pleasure, Kelsey. Thanks for the time.